Alright, welcome to the channel. Let's lower some leaf springs. Get that low in your slow. I was just thinking to myself, it's probably about time I lowered this thing. I think I'm going to start with the back. Some quick calculations suggest that we could get that tyre pretty close to that guard before it's on the rail. So that'd be kind of cool. Let's see what we can do. All right, it's raining now. It's nice and dark in here. I've just put it up in the chassis stands. So 2 chassis stands, one on each side on the chassis rail. I've got the jack under the diff. So we've got the wheels off the ground. You don't want to jack the jack up too much just to take a little bit of weight, but we'll use the jack to get it off the leaf springs eventually. So we're going to come here and undo these U-bolts first and the shock. And then we should be able to lift, obviously after we've done the other side as well, we should be able to lift the diff off the leaf springs. Get rid of those bump stops. Alright, so they're the bump stops. They're held in by the U-bolts on this ute. So we want to get rid of those so we can go up there with the diff. And we also want to get rid of some of these leaf springs so they can sit a lot flatter. Okay, so to get this party started, I've got the chassis stands under the chassis. That's pretty obvious, isn't it? That's actually what they're made for. Anyway, they're under the chassis, and I jacked the ute up using the diff center, the diff housing. Now, we're going to leave the jack here just for safety, but the diff is actually just sitting on the leaf spring, so there's no force up. Okay, that's so we can get these leaf springs off with no stress on the U-bolts. They should just be happy to come off. I already kind of loosened those ones. I soaked them in WD-40. But what will happen is, hopefully, crusty ass bolts, nuts, whatever you want to call them. Those 4 nuts are off the U-bolts. Now the shock is going to be doing something to stop this from happening, so we're going to get rid of him too. I'm going to have to get some new ones of these, obviously, down the track. Okay, so I've freed it. It can go out of the way. Like that. I think that's the handbrake cable holding onto that with his little spring. Right, now we've got all that off. Let's move on to the other side. Move up for this one. Especially if you plan on putting it back together. Alright, both sides are free, so let's take this diff up and see if it doesn't want to fall forward. Let's see how low we can get it before we hit something. Oh, I got it to about there, and still got 100 mil to the rail. I think that's still pretty decent, even like that, with 100 millimeters to the rail. So I think we might fight with these leaf springs and see what we can do, see how low they'll actually go. So obviously this is just rough, but you can see the gap we still have. It's at least 100 mil there. So with 100 millimeters of gap, we could technically get some rim tuck in here, but there's also other things to worry about, like what else it's going to hit, whether the tail shaft can handle that much of an angle. Obviously that pinion's not right. That's pretty disgusting, but we could correct that with some angled blocks if we wanted to, but I think it shouldn't be too bad. Should be able to live with it. So next, I'll get these leaf springs off. All right, again, I'm gonna have to lube everything to death because everything's just a little bit crusty. Now we've got those two bolts and nuts at the back. Well, they're not really bolts, I guess they're just things with nuts on them. We've got those two, and then you've got this one at the front. And you've also got those two little nuts which hold the bush in. I'd recommend starting from the front just because it's always more of a pain in the ass, especially with crap like this going on. You have to do that with the spanner. Should be fun. The other side should be good to hit with the rattle gun. The looks of it looks good. So let's get started on that. All right, well, it turns out this nut on the back here is 20 mil, or maybe 21. I got a 22. If you're good with numbers, it's not the right number. Anyway, let's hope it's not tight. Yeah, well, that was looser than I was expecting it to be. But anyway, I'll take that free pass. All right, so we got the nut off the back. Like I was saying, you need to undo these two bolts because that's gonna get the bush to come out. Now, because we've got the wheels up on these other wheels, wheels on wheels and wood, we can use the jack to support this part of the leaf spring, take the weight off there so that'll slide out easier. Well, that's the theory anyway. All right, so that's out. Looks like that. Once it's out, that was the end we could see with the two bolts fastening it, and that was the end with the nut on it. Now we should be able to let the jack down. That should just fall out like that. All right, now we won't need the jack for the other end unless you don't want it to fall on your head. So, if you don't mind it falling on your head, move right along. All right, so plenty of room up this end. The right side socket. That one out. Uh-oh. That's not gonna work, is it? All right, made it. On a crappy angle, but we got out of there. I shouldn't need a very big hammer for this. All right, so with that out of the way, we should be able to knock this one this way. Just like that. Bam. It's out. Well, that's our leaf spring out. You'll see at the top, there's a little locator there that goes into the diff, centers the diff, stops the diff from moving around, sliding backwards and sliding forwards. And there's a nut on the bottom. Now, theoretically, you could just undo that nut, but this is gonna have a lot of spring left in it. There's a lot of tension in there, especially on a leaf pack with that many leaves in it. So you don't want to just rattle gun that off. I mean, you can if you want. I've done it before, but I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't suggest you do it. Some of these can have a real kick. So the most common way is to put G-clamps on here and then slowly undo the G-clamps, which is a little bit sketchy as well, but it's definitely safer than just rattle gunning that nut off. I think we're going to go the G-clamp route. We'll see what we can do. But that's our next mission, to get these apart and strip them down. Decided to use the press. Just got it on that locator, the other end of that bolt there. Just got a bit of pressure on it, and I'm gonna rattle gun that nut off. I had a look, there doesn't seem to be that much pressure on these springs, so hopefully it's not gonna fly apart and kill us. Well, me, it's not gonna kill you, is it? Nice and safe behind the camera. Alright, you made it this far, we can go to emergency. We didn't die. So all we gotta do is get these little things off so the leaves can come apart. You end up with a big mess like that. Some of that you may or may not use, but I'm just interested in this top leaf at the moment. I've got the other one, so we'll probably put those back in. Use the big flat one wherever it's gone. There's one just there. Use that big flat one to take up a bit of space. Hopefully the U-bolts will fit. They usually don't, but we'll see what happens. We'll put them both back in, strap them in and see how it sits, and then go from there. Make sure this bolt fit in the locator of the diff. You don't want to mess that up, otherwise the diff won't sit on there. But that fits. I'll just reuse the nut that was on there. They're both metric fine bolts, so it doesn't really matter. But you're not going to know what the spring rate is, so I guess it's a bit of a disclaimer there. So you've probably worked out by now that you're either going to need shorter U-bolts or the original one's going to work. The other way is you can always put a spacer on the thread or put a spacer back on the leaf springs. It's kind of like a lowering block, or cut down some other parts of the leaf just to fill up the gap. But all right, so I got that nice and clean. I'm going to finger some grease on there. And put the nuts back on and just run them up and down the thread a couple of times with a rattle gun or a ratchet, whatever you're using. But either way, make sure the nuts go all the way up to the blank part of the bolt and all the way back down. And then you can throw them back in. If these U-bolts are going to work and there's going to be enough thread to get them on there and hold the plate on the bottom, kind of on the home straight. So I'll put these in. And then see if we've got enough thread. Put our busted ass shocky back on. I'll have to get some new ones. All right, let's get off the chassis stands. Let's check out the end result. So it should look a little something like that. You can see we've still got a bit of clearance to the rail there. I've put in a set of heavy duty shocks. That'll be in another video. It's on the factory mounts, on factory angle anyway. It's not ideal, but they're doing what they're meant to do. They're keeping the diff off the rail and they're stopping the back of the car from bouncing. You won't have a lot of spring rate with only 3 leaves in, but you can add some, take some away as you go. I find that they do sag after a little while, stretch out a bit, especially if you put some weight in them. Anyway, that's it. all done.